Listen. Can you hear it? It's the sound of a clock ticking in the void. A clock set 4.5 billion years ago, when the rubble of our solar system first coalesced. One piece of that rubble, a mountain of dark stone and nickel iron, was set on a long, looping path. Its journey was a patient one, a slow-motion ballet of celestial mechanics, waiting for its moment to intersect with our own. That moment has a name. It is not a question of if. It is a date. April 13th, 2029. On that day, the asteroid Apophis will not simply fly by. It will perform a gravitational dance with our world. A pas de deux so intimate that the gravitational embrace of Earth will permanently alter its path. And in that embrace lies our potential annihilation. Forget what you've been told about near misses. This is unprecedented in recorded history. Apophis, a cosmic bullet the size of 3 football fields, will pass beneath the orbit of our own geostationary satellites. For millions of people across Asia and Africa, it will be visible to the naked eye. A faint, swift pinprick of light moving with an unnerving, silent purpose. It will be beautiful. It will be terrifying. But the true terror is not in the spectacle. It is in the physics. As it passes, Earth's gravity will wrench and twist its orbit. This is a certainty. The uncertainty lies in the result of that twist. The outcome of this cosmic encounter hinges on precision measured in meters. Not kilometers, meters. This brings us to the heart of the nightmare. The gravitational keyhole. Do not think of it as a place. Think of it as a trigger, a fault line in the sky. It is an area of space so infinitesimally small, a phantom target perhaps only 400, 500, 600 meters wide, that from our vantage point, it is statistically invisible. Yet, it holds absolute power. If Apophis passes through this specific coordinate, the gravity of our planet will act as a perfect slingshot, recalibrating its orbit with malicious precision. It will place the asteroid on a new path, a return trajectory that guarantees a direct impact on April 13th, 2036. This is not a higher probability. This is not a risk. This is a sentence. Passing through the keyhole is the cosmological equivalent of a judge's gavel falling. The trial is over. The verdict is guilty. The sentence is execution, 7 years hence. Why can't we predict this with certainty? Why is the keyhole a ghost? Because Apophis is not a simple, solid sphere. Our radar images reveal a monstrous, peanut-shaped rubble pile, a chaotic aggregate of boulders and dust, tumbling not in a stable spin, but in a complex, unpredictable wobble. This shape, this movement, makes it susceptible to subtle, invisible forces that are the bane of astronomers. The most insidious of these is the Yarkovsky effect. Imagine this. The sun heats one side of the asteroid. As that side rotates into darkness, it radiates the heat back into space. This radiation acts like a tiny, unseen photon thruster. Over years and decades, this minuscule push, a force smaller than the weight of a feather, can accumulate. It can alter the asteroid's velocity by centimeters per second, enough to push it across those critical few hundred meters, enough to guide it directly into the keyhole. We are trying to predict the path of a tumbling, spinning, heat-radiating mountain decades into the future, with a margin of error smaller than the object itself. Our models are elegant lies. They are a comforting blanket of statistics, hiding a bed of nails. Now, let us abandon all pretense of comfort and speak plainly about the consequences. Let us talk about what a 2036 impact really means. The initial energy release would be measured not in megatons, but in teratons. The fireball would be visible from space, a temporary, artificial sun blooming over the Pacific. But the light is just the beginning. The shockwave propagating through the ocean and the crust would be an event without precedent in human history. The tsunami it generates would not be a wave. It would be a 5-kilometer-high moving cliff of water, superheated by the impact, traveling at supersonic speeds. It would not hit the coast of Australia. It would vaporize it. The coastline would cease to exist. Sydney, Brisbane, entire swathes of civilization would be scoured from the map in minutes. The land beneath them pulverized into slurry and washed into the interior. But water is only the first blow. The seismic shock would trigger every fault line in the Pacific Rim. The ring of fire would become a ring of absolute fire. Earthquakes of magnitudes we have never measured would ripple across the globe, toppling cities thousands of miles inland. Then comes the rain, not of water, but of rock. The material ejected from the impact would re-enter the atmosphere, heating the sky to incandescence. The very air would catch fire, igniting continent-spanning firestorms. The smoke and dust would blot out the sun, not for months, but for years. A nuclear winter without the nuclear war. Global agriculture would collapse in a single growing season. The complex, just-in-time supply chains that feed 8 billion people would shatter overnight. This is the true horror. It is not the instant of impact. It is the long, slow, agonizing aftermath. It is the breakdown of everything. It is hospitals without power, surgeries without anesthesia. It is the desperate search for clean water in a world poisoned by ash and salt. It is the end of law, of order, of compassion. The survivors would not be building a new world. They would be inheriting a global graveyard, fighting a daily, brutal war against starvation, disease, and their fellow man. They would envy the dead. And here is the most paralyzing truth of all. If Apophis passes through that keyhole in 2029, there is nothing we can do. The game is over. With a 7-year warning, the energy required to deflect an object of that mass is beyond our current civilization's capability. It would be like trying to stop a freight train by throwing a pebble at it 1 mile from the station. Our best proposed technologies, kinetic impactors, gravity tractors, even nuclear explosives, require decades of lead time to impart a meaningful course change. After 2029, the conversation instantly shifts from deflection to survival. and survival would be a brutal, global triage. Which pockets of humanity do we save? Which knowledge do we preserve in hardened arcs? The project of 10,000 years of human civilization, our art, our science, our culture, would be reduced to a desperate, last-ditch effort to save a few scattered seeds from the fire. This is why the years leading to 2029 are the most critical in the history of our species. This is not hyperbole. It is a simple statement of fact. We are in a race against a clock set by the universe itself. We need a global Apollo-level mission, not to study Apophis, but to master it. We need a fleet of probes to rendezvous with this asteroid, to map its gravitational field, to land seismometers on its surface, to understand the exact magnitude of the Apophis push. We need to know its composition, its density, its internal structure. Is it a solid rock or a fragile pile of gravel? The method of deflection depends on it. We need to have deflection technologies tested, validated, and ready in space, waiting for the command. A single, well-placed nudge, years in advance, is all it takes to miss the keyhole by 1,000 kilometers. It is the difference between a passing curiosity for astronomers and the end of human history. The official statements are calm, reassuring. They speak of refined orbits and eliminated risks. This is the language of public relations, not of existential preparedness. They fear panic. But I will tell you what should truly be feared. Complacency. Apathy. The quiet, comfortable lie that someone, somewhere, has this under control. They do not. No one does. Not yet. This is a threat that transcends borders, politics, and ideologies. It is a threat to every single human being alive, and to every generation that may follow. The keyhole is a fixed point in the geometry of our solar system. Our awareness is the first and most crucial deflection maneuver. Your voice, your demand for action, your refusal to be placated by comfortable lies. This is the pebble that must be thrown now, to avoid having to stop the freight train later. The clock in the void is ticking. The question is, are we listening? If the data in 2028 were to show a 10% chance of keyhole passage, would they tell you? A 25% chance? At what threshold does the calculus shift from preventing panic to managing collapse? The moment the probability becomes public, the clock starts on economic and social chaos. Markets would spiral into oblivion overnight. The insurance industry, the bedrock of global finance, would cease to exist. There would be a run on resources that would make every war and famine in history look like a minor disturbance. Governments know this. So they walk a razor's edge, funding just enough research to maintain the illusion of control, while praying to the laws of probability that the problem simply goes away. This is not a conspiracy. It is a brutal, pragmatic assessment of human nature. The greatest threat to global order in the final years before 2029 may not be the asteroid, but the knowledge of it. And what of the deflection mission itself? Imagine the pressure. The most important mission in human history, and it must be launched not in response to a certain impact, but to a probability, a percentage point. The political will to spend hundreds of billions, to risk a failed launch or a technological malfunction that could cause the very impact it was meant to prevent, would be immense. The Apophis dilemma would dominate global politics. What nation leads it? Who controls the spacecraft? What if the chosen method, a kinetic impactor, shatters the rubble pile into multiple, unpredictable fragments, turning one bullet into a shotgun blast? What if a nuclear-pushed deflection, the only option with enough force in a short time frame, is vetoed by nations fearing nuclear weapons in space? The debates would be paralyzing. While politicians argue over protocols and proportional response, Apophis continues its silent, unyielding approach. The window for a simple, elegant nudge closes day by day. Now, let's descend into the aftermath. The impact is not the end. It is the beginning of a new, dark chapter for our planet. The billion tons of vaporized rock and water ejected into the stratosphere will form a permanent, high-altitude shroud of silicate aerosols. These are not like volcanic dust that falls quickly. They are microscopic, glassy particles that will linger for decades, scattering sunlight and absorbing heat. The result is a climatic paradox, a brutal, surface-level global winter, paired with a stratospheric heating that shreds the ozone layer. The sky would become a toxic ally. The faint, blood-red sun that filters through would provide neither warmth for crops nor protection from ultraviolet radiation. The DNA of every surviving plant and animal on the surface would be under constant assault. Skin cancer would become the least of worries. Widespread cataracts and sterilization would be the norm. The very chemistry of the oceans would shift, becoming more acidic as the atmosphere fills with sulfur compounds, dissolving the shells of the few surviving marine organisms and collapsing the final remnants of the food web. In this long twilight, what becomes of humanity? Forget governments, forget nations. The unit of survival shrinks to the family, the tribe, the fortified compound. The knowledge to rebuild, the electrical engineering, the metallurgy, the medicine, would become the most precious and rarest commodity, guarded more fiercely than food or water. The last functioning nuclear power plant, without a grid to feed, would eventually suffer a catastrophic meltdown, poisoning another region of the world. Dams without maintenance would burst. The stored knowledge of the digital age would become inaccessible within a generation, as the power grid fails and the specialized hardware to read hard drives decays. We would be thrust back into a new dark age, but with the grim awareness of what was lost. The survivors would tell stories of the sky god that punished the world, their myths born from the dim memory of our science. Our greatest monuments would not be the pyramids, but the sealed, reinforced bunkers filled with rotting books and corroded servers. Silent tombs of a civilization that chose to record its epitaph, but failed to save itself. This is the stakes. This is the full, unvarnished truth. The 2029 flyby is our gateway to one of two futures. In one, it is a footnote in astronomy textbooks, a fascinating near miss that taught us about the solar system. In the other, it is the event from which all future human history is dated, before Apophis and after. The difference between these two futures is a matter of meters and of will. The technology to deflect an asteroid is within our grasp. It is not a matter of invention, but of priority. It is a choice. We have chosen to spend trillions on weapons to use against ourselves. We have chosen to squander our intellectual capital on trivialities. Now, the universe has presented us with a bill. The cost is focus. The cost is global cooperation. The cost is a fraction of what we willingly spend on our own self-destruction. So when you look up at the night sky and you see that moving star in 2029, understand what you are truly witnessing. You are not watching a rock. You are watching a test, a final exam for humanity. The question is not about our technology. It is about our maturity. It is about our ability to unite as a single species, to recognize a common enemy that does not care for our borders or our ideologies, and to marshal our collective genius to ensure our continued existence. The clock in the void is ticking, but it is not counting down to our doom. It is counting down to our moment of decision. The keyhole is fixed. Our will is not. The future is not yet written. Let us ensure that the story we tell is one of triumph, not a eulogy whispered into the eternal, silent